So I'm here to, in 20 minutes, create some awareness about a new initiative that we've started with the VSF back last October, I think is when we first started talking about it. Is that right, John? Something like that. So we're calling it the Cloud Device Discovery Initiative. So maybe before we get into this, Brian is not with me today, but he's the guy doing all the work, so I have to give him the credit. So about us as presenters, so my name's Sidney Lovely. I work for AWS Elemental. That's the AWS Media Services team within Amazon. Prior to that, I was head of engineering for 10 years at Grass Valley. And prior to that, I was with Harmonic in the media server business for 7 years. So been in the industry for just a minute. My colleague Brian's been with AWS Elemental for about 8 years. And prior to that, he was a software developer with Intel going back to the way back days. So a quick word about AWS Elemental. So we offer a range of media services, including Media Connect and Media Live. So Media Connect is the service that I run, which is, you can kind of think about it as the front door to the cloud. This is the way to get live signals into the cloud. Media Lives are live transcoders, so for all of your OTT delivery needs. All of that goes on to packaging, tailor, and off to the consumer. And we also offer a file-based transcode service called Media Convert. So Media Connect use cases are kind of interesting because it's really been focused on getting your signals in and out of the cloud. So it kind of usually starts with going into a virtual private cloud. So these are the things where you'd be using things like Ansible and Terraform and things to set up your workflow in your environment. It's also focused on getting things cross-region to other regions in the world and cross-account. And the thing that's interesting about this is that lots and lots of customers we've talked to, they tell us that oftentimes, all of this stuff, and as hard and challenging as the Ansible and Terraform stuff is, you end up with getting signals into and out of the cloud in the first place is often the hardest challenge, they're telling us. So why is this? And if you think about it, there's lots of transport protocols out there to choose from that provide reliable transport into and out of the cloud. So protocols like RIST, SRT, even TR07. The challenge, though, is this really requires a sophisticated set of networking skills for most customers to manage that. So if you think about it, you have your on-prem network. It's usually behind a firewall with a set of private IP addresses. Those things hit the public internet, which NAT to public IP addresses. Oftentimes they're leased and they changed. They change over time. And then that's to the security group, which is sort of the firewall within the cloud. Moving on to finally getting into your virtual private cloud. So this is not something that a typical camera technician is going to be able to deal with. The good news is, though, this isn't a unique problem. It's unique to maybe our industry. It's not unique to the IT industry. So the IT industry has dealt with this for a long time with something called IoT technologies. So this is the ability to find and discover devices and securely and reliably pair them to the cloud. So back in October and then kind of at VSF in February, we've started a new activity group based on cloud device discovery. So this whole thing contemplates essentially a new technical recommendation that's currently in an activity group within the VSF, along with an open source SDK and a reference design service. So the idea here is that I think we've learned our lesson over time in the industry that things that come with open source SDKs are easy to integrate, easy to adopt, and so that's a key part of what we're offering here. So some of the issues that you have with current workflows, in addition to just connecting and the network issues, there's a lot of manual connectivity required to be able to do the record keeping track of all your devices in the wild, all their IP addresses, accessing things remotely through VPC tunneling, configuration, and then persistent monitoring. And it reminds me a lot of the days in 2110 and 2022-6 before we had things like NMOS, right? We were manually managing large multicast IP addresses in spreadsheets and those types of things. There is a better way. So the idea with the CDD SDK is it provides several key benefits. So first of all, the idea is that you can essentially push a button on your device. As long as it has the SDK in it, it will connect to a service. It doesn't have to be an AWS service. There's nothing Amazon specific about this. It could be in Google. It could be in a private data center. But the cool thing is you don't actually have to deal with any IP addresses whatsoever. It registers with the backend service, and you can pair it with a pairing code like you would with your Netflix account. From there, once you have a secure connection to the device, again, not a transport connection for video, but a communication and control connection that allows you to automatically connect and set up all the network settings all in software, manage the connections persistently, and then monitor it 24/7. So for example, we have a customer that's interested in using a whole bunch of small encoders to monitor traffic cameras in a city. And these things are up on poles. They're not something you have to roll a truck to go change an IP address on that. So the ability to remotely connect to that and control it and manage it from the cloud is critical in those types of applications. So this was a demo. We're going to skip past that in the interest of time, but we have, I guess, getting into a little bit more in the details here. I don't know how much time I have left. But the CDD ultimately starts with an SDK. This SDK is transport agnostic, so it rides alongside of what you would do with RIST or with SRT or with TR07. So it can run on any devices that are connected to the cloud. That could be a camera, an encoder, a decoder, et cetera. The client device launches an SDK and then basically communicates with your service wherever it's running. That SDK then ends up ultimately setting up a secure MQTT connection, which is a protocol used by IoT. And then the schema between the cloud and the devices is a fixed schema that defines all the typical things you typically need for connection management. So things like bitrate, codec, and so on. But it's also an extensible schema. So if you want to be able to use the API in the cloud to directly control devices and do things like change graphics layers on a graphics engine, for example, you can do that and build on top of the schema. A little bit more detail on the technology here. So again, initially, you're behind a firewall. Your SDK is running on something, right? It communicates through HTTP initially to the cloud, but then ultimately sets up that MQTT connection. And again, one of the nice things about this is there's no calling up the IT department, punch a hole in my firewall. It's all using well accepted principles. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit here in the interest of time, past some of the little more nitty gritty on how things work, and talk a little bit more about kind of where we go from here. So kind of what's available now. So currently available as of I think probably April. We have an actual SDK available that's been under review with the activity group within the VSF now for several months. That's available on GitHub, so you can download it. It comes with a reference design that basically mocks a video endpoint using FFmpeg that you can run on a computer. We also have CloudFormation templates, which is our version of Ansible and Terraform, that allows you to spin something up in Amazon that will communicate with that. And then the CDD communication protocol will, is obviously published, and there's a set of documentation alongside that. We've also started integration with multiple different vendors. And so we actually have an integration already with Osprey Video. So they have a small encoder device. They actually have a whole portfolio of products, but we've started with their small encoder. That small encoder is running the SDK and it's starting to get evaluated by broadcasters today. So, this is an open activity group in the industry. So we'd like to kind of get the activity group to kind of finalize the TR spec by, say, the end of the year. So there is a bi-weekly working CDD group that several folks are involved in. And again, the open source SDK is actively being developed and updated by multiple people. The cloud endpoint's developed, and Osprey, as I mentioned, has this operational today. So again, working towards finalizing the production version of the SDK, finalizing the communication protocol, and at that point, once that's been accepted and the VSF and folks that have been steering it are happy with that, we'll actually implement that within the Media Connect service at AWS as well. So this hopefully will help our customers move their workloads to the cloud more easily and help people take advantage of that next level of technology with minimizing some of the learning curve and the networking skills for everybody involved. And I think that